So check this out. Hello, and welcome to this video on my new module, Manic, made in collaboration with Apollo View Modular. Manic is an exploration of dual-channel mono, mono to stereo, and true stereo modulation and wave shaping. You can think of it as a dual or stereo VCA with superpowers, but before we get into it, here's what's to come. This video is sponsored by me. Go buy a Manic. So as you're watching this, Manic is out right now. It's 8HP, and it's been a pleasure to get so many ideas and use cases into a simple interface with the fantastic work from Apollo View Modular. I'd also like to thank the Glasgow Synth Guild for producing this batch of Manic modules for us. They've also been a great part of bringing this to life. The core function of Manic is to work as a VCA, where we have an input with a manual bias level control, a modulation input that has normal and inverting modulation depth control, and a direct clean VCA output. We have channel 1 control on the slider and this knob, channel 2 on this side, and then ins and outs for channels 1 and 2 going across the bottom of the module. But one thing to note here is that you can switch the VCAs to go from standard unipolar VCA behaviour to bipolar behaviour, making this work as a ring modulator that can invert audio or CV inputs under audio or CV control. And one thing to note is, in unipolar mode, this is a 0 to 5 volt level control for the input, and when we flick this to bipolar mode, it's -5 to +5 volts across that slider, where it's 0 volts in the middle. In order to aid some mono to stereo behaviour, we've added normaling of the inputs and the modulation inputs. The channel 1 input will normal to the channel 2 input when that's not patched, and the mod 1 input will normal down to the mod 2 input when that's not patched. This allows for simple one input to dual or stereo output patching, or controlling a stereo input with the same modulation source. And while precision VCAs are something I don't think you can have enough of, and ring modulation is fantastic for audio exploration and manipulating CV, we weren't content without slapping in a serious dash of superpower processing, again for both audio and CV. Over on the shape output, we have 3 shape options per channel. With the switches in the mid positions, this is an inverted copy of the clean direct VCA output. And when switched up, the shape outs are clipped with 2 flavours of saturation. On channel 1 here, we have a TanH style soft clipper, and on channel 2 we have a hard clipper. Moving these switches to the bottom, channel 1 has a Serge style wave folder, and on channel 2 we have a Buchla style wave folder. And at the core of many waveshapers, folders and distortions are VCAs, where you have, say, a fold CV level on a wavefolder module. What that's doing is increasing or decreasing the level into the fold circuit. So with the VCAs up front on Manic, you have flexible CV control over wavefolder mount or clipping levels. And exposing the clean VCA out as well as the shape outs allows you to get into some flexible parallel processing and creative routing options, again for audio and CV. And a final thing before we get into patches, Manic from its original design ideas has been made to work in stereo. You can go fully dual mono and use them for 2 different independent things, but it really excels at taking a mono input and creating beautiful stereo images with a well-balanced but different set of ring modulation, folding and clipping characters. But we've also tweaked these different shape circuits to be balanced for true stereo inputs and outputs. The timing index is on screen, skip around, and let's dive in. So I'm sure you've all heard the saying you can't have enough VCAs, So here I'm using two of them for my synth voice. Muting the effects and drums. This is the output from Manic. Now we'll start here with really basic use, which is to put a sound into a VCA. That's the purple cables here, and it's a filtered little sequence. So that's my input sound. And the green trace here is my main envelope playing the rhythm in my sequence, putting that into the mod and turning that up. Basic VCA behaviour. But I'd like to duck this against my drums so we get this nice sidechain feel to the patch. And one thing you could do here, as we have two channels on Manic, is to take this sound that's now envelope modulated, patch it down into the second channel, use an inverting signal, in this case a quarter note envelope to match my kick drum rhythm, patch that into the VCA, invert it on this inverting mod control, and that will make the audio duck in time with the music. However, I think there's a bit of a better way to do this here, and that is to take this envelope, the green one that was just controlling our sound, into the second VCA and process the CV with that second VCA. So if I was to just patch this back into here, the traces here on the scope match the colours on the cables. So green trace is my main envelope rhythm, blue trace is my modulator, yellow trace is what's controlling the first VCA, and if I turn that up, you can see in here we get the same behaviour. This is the same as turning that mod up and down when the envelope was just patched straight in. Now if I invert, in fact let's swap the rhythm here to a 16th note, this will make it a little bit more obvious. So this is now a swung 16th note rhythm playing, and if we use this modulation signal, the blue one, that's normal VCA behaviour. But if I turn this up, turn up the bias these are unipolar VCAs, and then invert this so it ducks the level. Hopefully you can hear this ducking effect. I'll bring the drums back in. And the advantage here of actually processing the CV before I use it is that I can patch this anywhere. I could take this inverting, ducking envelope rhythm, use it for filtering, PWM, modulation effects, anything you like in the mix. Now going back to my main rhythm rather than this swung 16th note. So here we'll look at two ways to use ring modulation as a kind of universal VCO expander, and a way of expanding beyond your classic ring mod tones and imparting them with some additional character. So starting on channel 1 here, we'll use ring modulation to create new waveforms. Yellow trace here, the input, and yellow trace on the scope, is a sine wave from a single VCO, and the blue trace is a sub from the same oscillator. I'm in normal unipolar VCA mode here, turning up my sound and adding some of that sub-modulation. And you'll see already we have an interesting wave that's almost like a switch between the sub input and the sine there. We're going to the bipolar ring modulation mode. You can actually invert the signal with the modulation. That's a good way of creating some good old Batmania waveforms if that's what you're into. But let's patch across to the shape output here and expand this further by clipping that ring modulated wave. And you've loads of scope to dial in a new tone here. Muting that in my mixer. Let's go to the second channel, and this is no input, so it's normaled from the input above the sine wave, and another sine wave from a second oscillator. And there's your classic ring mod tones. Two sine waves playing different sequences, modulating or ring modulating each other. Now one way to get away from the clangorous ring mod tones is to sync your oscillators. So I'll take a pulse from this one and sync it in the other. And we get some hard sync overtones here. And you can still push this low end input through. And again, let's expand this with some clipping on the shape out. This is the hard clip on channel 2. And we're far from a clangorous old Dalek style ring mod tone here. 2 sine waves, ring modulated, they're in sync, and we're hard clipping it. And pushing all that low end through from the input. Let's modulate this sound with some panning from an LFO in my mixer. Close down a low pass gate, and going back to the top channel here, let's close down a low pass gate to play a rhythm on that sound. Both sounds together. We've got a pair of killer new tones. So let's take a look at the 2 clippers built into Manic. I have some delay in my mix, I'll turn that off, and let's start with channel 1 and my drum mix. And this is my drum mix coming through clean. I have this modulation, green cables, green trace here, which is just a quarter note envelope that I'm using like an accent pattern. As I turn up the mod on the VCA, this is just opening that VCA and adding a bit of that on top of the drums already coming through with the bias turned up. We get this accent pattern that kind of pushes and accents this quarter note in the rhythm. But removing that, let's go into the clip mode, which on the top channel, channel 1, is a TanH style soft clipper, and you'll hear this saturation and compression style effect as I bring up the level. Bypassing it. A lot of excitement, saturation, but it's not overbearing. Now going to the bass channel, and here it is, bypassing that clean. It's a mix of a sub and a saw wave in this pony VCF here, with a basic envelope modulating the resonant low pass. And on channel 2, we have a hard clipper. So turning on clip. It's really lovely on resonant and already moving modulating synth tones. The modulation is a mixture of a ducking sidechain envelope, just mixed externally, and a 16th note envelope. So when I turn on the drums, we get the rhythmic pulse in this ducking against the drums. And one nice thing is you get the clean direct VCA outs before the shape outs. I'm taking the clean bass out up to a delay effect. So my ping pongs of stereo delay are clean against the dirty driven, hard clipped bass sound. And having the effects on the clean sound really helps the mix there. So let's take a look at the wavefolding and doing so in stereo. So stripping things back here, we're listening to the outputs from Manic. I have a mono triangle input, just a single waveform from this oscillator. This is normaling to the second channel, giving us mono to stereo behaviour. Channel 1 is a Serge style folder panned hard left, and channel 2 is a Buchla style folder panned hard right. But both of those folder circuits have been tweaked to work really well in stereo. So as I move at the bias control, the manual level controls, we get a balanced but really nice stereo image that emerges from this mono input. Let's swap to a sine wave and grab some headphones if you don't have any on. And Manic excels at folding already more complex or richer waves. So if we input something like a saw wave, which typically isn't what you'd fold, we still get some interesting tonal changes. I have some envelopes here from Maths, nice snappy, clicky, transient-rich envelopes. By modulating, we have these lovely woody percussive sounds. They sound great in stereo. Now all of this sound is coming through a passive low-pass gate, which is currently offset fully open, so it's having no effect here. If I close down the offset without the modulation and a static level, you can hear the effect of the low-pass gate. So steady modulation of level in low-pass gates, random Maths envelope modulation of fold tone, let's switch back to a triangle wave here, and then I'm taking my clean outs into my effects. If I take that dry, you can hear the clean out. And this is keeping the mix much cleaner because that richer, more dynamic folded wave isn't kind of mushing around in this delay. So clean outs to effects is kind of a nice tip here. Drums back in. Now we're really just scratching the surface here of what Manic can do. Think of all the things you can do with normal VCAs. I have a ton of patch ideas for ring modulators and bipolar VCAs. Those different clipping characteristics and behaviours, different fold tones that we can get here. Audio rate modulation works really well with them as well. There's a lot to come. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. That will certainly help inform future videos, and we're here to chat about Manic, of course. Hit like and subscribe, head to patreon.com/DivKid to support the work that I do. Thanks for watching, checking out Manic, go buy a Manic, and I'll see you next time. Bye.